Well, thanks, Ron, for taking the time to do the interview today. The first question I want to start with is a little bit about your background, and can you tell us where you grew up at?
Well, I grew up in Red Cloud, Nebraska, and if you've never been there, don't bother to go. It's a small town south of Hastings, 40 miles. Then when I was in high school, I got the opportunity to go to a military school for 2 years, and that was in Lexington, Missouri. It was not because of my conduct, which was contrary to the law. It was because my folks were education-oriented, and the local school system was a little bit better than nothing.
Oh, really?
And so I went down for 1 year, and they decided that was a hell of a good investment, so they sent my brother down a year later. And then my senior year, I told them I wanted to go back. We cut a deal. I'd pay what I could, and they'd pay the rest of it. And so I went back to Lexington, Missouri, and enjoyed it. I mean, it was a military academy, which had some discipline, but that was, of course, something I didn't really need.
Of course not, right.
But that was an interesting, very interesting educational experience for me. I can safely say, laid an academic groundwork which was such that I've called on the knowledge that I got there many times during my lifetime. And instead of growing up in a town where a class of 21 kids, 7 boys and 14 girls, and the only boys were farm boys, except me, I got some education, and I'm damn glad of it.
You grew up in Red Cloud, though, and then went to high school in Lexington. Sure. What was your childhood like in Red Cloud, though? What did your family do?
My father was an attorney, not highly active, but he was one of 2 attorneys in town. And when I say not highly active, it's everybody around there was farming. They were too damn busy to get in trouble. And so he got through. He had a lot of support from his mother and from his aunt, who I assume could afford it. And they helped him out. And then when my brother got ready to go, he went down there for 3 years. And of course, he's not the least bit reticent about telling me how much smarter he is because of that. But it was a fantastic experience. When it came time to go to college, I was over the homesickness, and I went to Lincoln and buckled on for the ride.
So after you done with the military school in Missouri, then you decided to go to UNL. Why did you decide to go to UNL then?
Well, $120 a semester.
Oh, yeah, right.
Did I say something that tickled you?
Yeah, that was the night. I think my first book that was $120. So
yeah. There's a little bit of inflation in between, but No, he and my mother both graduated from the university at Lincoln, and I had no particular calling to go anywhere else. I guess I grew up kind of expecting to go there, and so that's why I went.
Gotcha. And why did you decide on your major? Did you go in with a specific major that you ended up with, or did you transition?
Oh, it was a case of I've always been mechanically inclined. If something was broken, I'd fix it. If it wasn't broken, well, I'd probably fix it anyway. And it was in a small town, you don't do much that doesn't require the ability to do things. I mean, I started out working as a paper route, and then I went to work in a drugstore, sweeping floors, stocking shelves, and then I moved on and went to a hatchery and helped get hatch chickens.
Wow.
And not by sitting on them, but by putting them in an incubator or in a and then when I got a little older, like 6 months older, then I was given the job of feeding the turkeys in the summertime at the turkey farm and gathering the eggs in the wintertime and the summertime from the chicken houses, driving a truck. And I mention that because I was only 14 when I started driving. And one day the cop stopped Dad on the street and he says, "Hey," he says, how old's Ron?" Dad says, "Well, he's about 18 now." I kind of thought he was a little young when I saw him driving. But
a lot of different roles you had there, and that was all prior to coming to UNL, but that is what sort of started you down to the path of mechanical engineering when you were starting UNL.
History and the other things left me cold. I mean, I'd study hard enough to get good grades in high school, but I knew that as a history teacher, I wasn't going to make any money. And I kind of wanted to live a little better than that, so I chose engineering. Studied mechanical engineering, then went through ROTC, and when I got to be a senior, I took 5 years, so I took a year out from ROTC and my 4th year, and then got back into it my 5th year, then got a commission, and went in the Army for 3 years and a couple of months. And I got out of there and came back to the States after having served in Korea during peacetime. I mean, it wasn't during the war. That was a good tour. I mean, I learned a lot even in Korea. I got a job. I'm trying to think what the heck it was. Oh, I was working on bridge crew. And that's about as close to mechanical engineering as a kid can get. And then graduated from college. And when I graduated from college, I went on active duty the same day. Popped in my little car and headed toward Fort Carson, Colorado.
But before you left for Colorado, say if we take it back a little bit, and you were just at the university now, and you decided on mechanical engineering, you're going through, like you said, you're in ROTC. Why then did you decide to join the Acacia fraternity?
Well, first of all, I spent the first half of my first year living in a rooming house. And to this day, I can't remember who was in the rooming house. I mean, that's how much contact I had with them.
What is a rooming house?
It's a house of about 6 rooms, and if you wanted to, you'd rent a room.
Oh, okay. You just rent the room.
It was a no adult dormitory, effectively, with private rooms.
Oh, okay.
So during my spring semester, I got to talking with an occasion and indicated that I was hospitable to the idea of seeing what a fraternity was like. So I got invited over a couple of times and met the brothers and pledges, and they extended an invitation to me, and it wasn't because I was good looking or wealthy, but at that time the house was exceedingly small. They extended a invitation to me, and I took them up on it. And through the pledge activities in the fall, then I became an active and lived out the last of 4.5 years of associating with them. Then went on active duty. And that was an abrupt break. I didn't stay in touch with anybody at that time because I was in the Army and had my hands full. Right,
absolutely. Get moved around and
yeah.
So you initiated in May of '59, and then it continued on for the next 4.5 years there. During your time in the fraternity, what are some of your favorite stories and some of your favorite memories?
Well, they fall into a lot of different categories, so I'll just take them without any order.
Sure, yeah.
One of them was, we were all upright citizens, and we knew it. And we didn't haze, and we didn't create problems for other fraternities, and we didn't create problems for other sororities, but somehow the spring of one of my earlier years, probably my sophomore year, the guys were kind of itchy to do something to get to be known better on campus. We investigated several things and discarded them because typically they were hazing or borderline hazing. But we did decide to help one of the sororities, or I should say 2 of the sororities because I didn't know where the property line was, fertilize their yard. So we chipped in, borrowed a fertilizer spreader from somebody, and I don't know who we borrowed it from. About 3 o'clock one morning in the spring of that year, we snuck over in between the Delta Gamma and the Zeta house. So we helped fertilize their yard for them. And a little bit later in the spring, it rained and it got warm and the grass sprouted and came up nicely, and the grass came up real nicely where it had been fertilized. And everybody was asking, hey, how'd that get there? Well, that was acacia spelled out on their lawn. And, of course, we had an ironclad alibi because at that time the hazing policy or unwanted interference was defined in such a way that you had to do physical damage to something. And we didn't do any damage. We just helped them to grow their grass. And it was funny to see them out there about twice a week trying to mow the damn stuff down.
Come right back. Wow.
Yeah. That was probably the craziest thing I did.
Do you remember any of your roommates or any of the philanthropies that you did while you were in the fraternity and active?
Well, I lived in the annex most of the time, and it was one guy to a room, so I didn't really have roommates. But I got along good with everybody, and probably my closest friends in the chapter house were Jerry Liederbrand and Marvin Cox, Rich Olerking, Gary Thompson, Bruce Williams, Larry Edwards. So we all got along. Growing up in a Masonic family had the pull, but it certainly was cemented by the Masonic affiliations with Acacia.
Oh, okay.
And let's put it this way. I know that I went ahead with it while I was still in college. Well, there's a lot of memory work involved in between the degree work.
Right.
I got most of my coaching or tutoring or whatever you want to call it in learning that under the grease rack in the filling station across the street.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was the guy who owned the filling station was a former master of his lodge. When I had an hour, I'd go over there and we'd do questions and answers, and he'd do his grease jobs.
So, did you join the lodge when you were still in college then?
Oh, yes.
Right.
I joined the lodge. I petitioned the lodge the day I turned. No, I tried to petition the lodge the day I turned 21, and I was unsuccessful. My boss at the time on a construction job was building a house, and I was a grunt laborer for him, and so summer hire.
Mm-hmm.
And so on my 21st birthday, I went to him, and he was the master of the lodge at the time. And I said to him, who do I have to ask for a petition? And he says, normally it'd be me. I said, good, I want one. And he said, I'll get it for you. And he did. And I filled it out. And then I took it back to him, and he refused to sign it.
Oh, really? Why?
He says, your father's going to sign it first.
Yeah, why did he want your dad to sign it first?
Well, because Dad was a Mason. And, and so was my grandfather. And he just thought that it would be appropriate that I get my father to sign it. So I did. And then I took it to the then master of the local lodge, and he said, I think it's got to be signed by your dad first. He wasn't going to sign the top line, and he waited until Dad came home, and then they signed it. My dad was in South America on a trip.
Sure. I bet you were busy with ROTC and ROTC, I should say, and
and
engineering school.
That kept me pretty good. Well, the engineering school kept me busy.
Yeah.
But ROTC was an addition. And my father was in the Army during World War II, and so military service didn't scare me. When I got through with the 2 years mandatory, the first 2 years, well, then I stuck it out for 2 more. That meant a commission when I got out.
When you got out of college as an ROTC, you became a commissioned officer? Is that the way it was?
Yeah. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant. Graduation day. Wore my uniform to graduation day in June and sweat like a trooper under the robe and everything, but And then next day I got up, packed the car, and headed to Fort Carson in Colorado.
Right. And where did life take you at that point?
Well, I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for artillery officer school, and then went back to Carson. And then I went back to Fort Sill later, about 8 months later, and became the survey officer for the battalion, doing surveying work to set up your artillery pieces and that sort of thing in precise locations. Strictly field work, and that sort of thing. You don't plant howitzers just anywhere. So, of course, you know, we were out in the hills and the mountains, and of course you didn't have much else out there except snow in the wintertime. But then I went to, I was on a 2-year detail to artillery. Then I went back east, and I was a first lieutenant by that time, and went to ordnance school. That was interesting, but it was a kind of a waste of time for me because, you know, they're training kids right out of college in ordnance school, just like I went to Fort Sill. And they have no concept as to what it is, so it's start at the bottom and learn. But I managed to stay out of trouble. And when I went back east the day before I got out of Fort Carson, I got married.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sorry?
What year was that in?
1965.
1965. Okay.
Back in the Middle Ages.
yeah, right. But that was to your lovely wife Diane, right?
Yeah, that was her. And then after we spent the night in the Brown Palace in Denver, we got up and took off for Virginia. And drove across the country, and then I got there for the Ordnance Corps school.
How did you meet Diane, though? Can you tell that story about what was the first time you ever met her?
God, I can't even think of his name now. It was on the end of my tongue. He was chapter advisor out there for ages, and he's still active, and he's from Iowa State.
Yeah, Keith Sawyers.
Keith Sawyers. And Keith and I got together good, and so I was out there in the year before on spring break looking for a job. And I said to my brother, who was going to Denver University, I said, "Hey, have you got a couple of girls that we can date?" He says, "No, but I got a friend of mine that knows quite a few local girls." I said, "Okay, give him a ring." So he got a hold of one, and then the other girl responded to her request, and so when we went out to pick them up, they had decided that they didn't want to ride in a car by themselves with two guys, so or by themselves. So two girls congregated at one of the houses, and we picked them up there. And on the way to the door, I said to Keith, I said, "You're taller than I am. You take the tall one, I'll take the short one." And he said, "Okay." I mean, we didn't either one know who we were going to take.
Yeah, right. Just by height.
And so what's one evening, with the short one? And and then I went back to Denver in the summertime to work. Well, the gal that I dated responded to me when I said, "Can I give you a call this summer?" She says, "Oh, sure," with a little sarcasm in her voice. And, well, long story short, I married the short one.
So you got the short one. That's great. That's a great story. Because you and Keith just going out on a blind date, end up marrying Diane, and being together for 50 years now, right?
It'll be 50 years.
50 years. That's terrific. Congratulations. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I just really like that story.
Then I put in for Fort Carson because it was only 70 miles down the road, and commuted back and forth to Denver and to the university in Boulder, and finally convinced her to marry me. And we got married and took off for the East Coast, and I did TDY at a couple of places back there. One was the Military Advisor School.
What does TDY stand for?
Temporary duty.
Oh.
I wasn't stationed there permanently. So you go TDY between a school and your next assignment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I spent a month there going to advisor school with a whole bevy of everything between first lieutenants and lieutenant colonels. I guess that's kind of the highlights of it. I mean, they went back to Washington, D.C. and got into law school.
Oh, really? So you left the military and went to Washington, D.C. and then joined school, or did you do it while you were in the military, or how did that work?
No, I was out of the military when I went back to go to law school. One semester full time in the daytime, and then switched over to nights because I could get a job and make a buck or two during the week, and that helped add to the support for Diane and me. Graduated in 3.5 years. What year did you
graduate in?
71.
Oh, great! Wow. Okay, so it was only 6 years after you married Diane, then you were done with law school. But you were in the Army for approximately.
Well, actually, it was about 4 years.
4 years. Okay.
4.5 years. But when I got out.
Why did you want to go to law school after going to engineering school?
Well, I had a feeling that I wanted to be a patent attorney. And patent attorneys typically are, well, not all the time, but a good many of them are engineers who go to law school.
Right.
And,
what made you want to decide on being a patent attorney instead of...
well, frankly, my father was a general attorney in a small town, and I keep telling him I did keep telling him that the only reason that we were able to live there was because I worked. No, he did all right, but he became the county judge.
Oh, gotcha.
And I don't know how long he held that, but it was quite a while. It just kind of things happened. And I decided I really did not want to be a small-town lawyer, suing a neighbor over a bill for some guy.
Right.
And so the patent attorney business was good for me, and I hope I did well during my career. In the meantime, I got a day job back in D.C. working for IBM in their patent training program at the same time. And I'd go to work in the morning, get off work, go to law school, and then get out of law school, and 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, my wife would meet me and take me home. So that was a pretty good regimen.
Sure.
I mean, it got tiring, but
yeah, I bet. Yeah, 3 years of that. A lot of work.
Yeah. But
So, and
hey, things don't come cheap.
right. If it was easy, everyone would do it, right? So
Yeah.
for sure.
And
So how long did you spend at IBM then in DC?
22 years. Yep. From Washington D.C., I went to Lexington, Kentucky. Went to work as a local patent attorney for them. We had a staff of 3 to 4, and of course the secretarial support, and raised my kids in Lexington, which was a good town to raise them in.
Okay. Which is just coincidental that you went to school in Lexington, Missouri.
Oh yeah, just coincidental. Yeah. I had no idea that I was going to go to Lexington, Kentucky, or anywhere else when I was in military school. So
yeah, what a coincidence. Yeah. And
how long? There's a big difference. Big difference. Lexington, Missouri is small.
Yes.
And the biggest thing in town is the military academy. And Lexington, Kentucky, it's a pretty good sized city compared to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how long did you spend in Lexington then?
Oh, 35 years, she said.
Oh wow, that's a good long time. So that was your your place where you raised the kids, and you and Diane, and then, you all retired. And how did you get to where you're at now in Salem?
Well, I gotta stop and think.
She just picked you up one night when you were sleeping and took you there, probably, right?
Something like that. Actually, that we wanted to be in the mountains, and we had acquired an interest in going to Fripp Island on vacations. And so we wanted to be close to there. So when we went on vacation, it wasn't halfway across the country.
And how long have you been in Salem?
9 years. And it's actually, we don't live in Salem. We live in a gated community about halfway between Seneca and Salem. And we've got about a 20-mile long lake just down the road from me, about a quarter of a mile.
Wow.
So it's tough duty.
Yeah, I bet. Sounds like it, sure. During all your adventures, both growing up and then after you left college and moved around, what advice would you most like to pass down to other Acacians?
Go where you want to. When I got out of high school, other than going home to visit my parents for a short period of time, I had absolutely zero interest in Red Cloud. It was a town of 1,700 people, and had no industry except farming.
So go where you want to. I'd say, that's a great advice for other Acacians, especially right now who are in that transition period.
That's right. There's no reason to go home. You go home when you want to. You go home when it's convenient, and you don't bug your parents. It's that simple.
Yeah. So, and Ron, one other thing I want to ask you is, in summation of all your experiences in your life, what are you most proud of in life?
I don't know. There's several things, but I can't really say one stands out over the other. I mean, the fact that I came out of the Army as a captain, I was proud of that. The fact that I went on to law school after that and went to work for IBM as a patent attorney, expanded my horizons immensely by following my wife to the East Coast and going down to Fripp Island, South Carolina. Living in a nice community near Seneca and Salem is a tremendous experience, and I can't really rank them. I mean, they all were good experiences.
Quite the experiences. So that's terrific. And Ron, I just want to again thank you for taking the time to tell your story to other Acacians and pass down your advice and talk about your past. And I think it's an important step. So I just want to thank you for that and taking the time to speak to us tonight.